Welcome back, everybody. Today is Thursday, October the 23rd, 2025. Today we're talking gold and silver, seeing some consolidation. We're going to talk about the next Libertad in this series is the 2012, and we're also talking Colorized Libertads. Stay tuned.
Ladies and gentlemen, your host, Titty Hunter!
So gold, silver, and the miners have been on a tear, rallying week after week for a succession of weeks, and really a lot of momentum nonstop. And it looks like we saw the first sizable correction happen this past Friday. The interesting thing about this past Friday is it was the main expiration day for a lot of the monthly contracts, for whether you're talking about GLD, SLV, or the mining stocks. So there was a expiration date, and so that was the first day we saw a very, very sizable correction take place. And so you might ask, how long will this correction take? I don't know. I don't have that answer. And it's why I've told you in previous videos to focus in on the big picture, to not worry about daily charts, weekly charts. I've always said focus in on the monthly, focus in on the quarterly. And one of the metrics I've mentioned to focus in on is the Dow Jones to gold ratio. And this is not a proprietary type of chart. A lot of folks chart this out. I just took it from this site, Gold Predictors. They post on Twitter a lot, and I essentially grabbed this chart, which is showing the long-term trend that it has broken down the Dow to gold ratio at this trend line, and that coincided with the big rally we've been seeing in gold now. And so you might ask, there could be a correction that may last a month and may last a handful of months. If this circle here that they circled in the chart, and if we go back to the mid-70s when it broke down the trend line back, the long-term trend line back from then, it did do a rally, a counter rally, which is suggestive of, the general stock market rallying a bit. So we could have that repeat again. It could be a succession of months here, maybe 1, 2, 3 months, perhaps slightly more, but I don't think more than that. And then I would anticipate that gold will resume rallying. Another long-term metric that I've highlighted in past videos is this one that is updated quite regularly from Value Seeker on Twitter/X, and it is essentially gold adjusted for the M2 money supply. And kind of what stands out here is that we had this relentless run of gold rallying month after month after month, and it kind of hit this trend line. And what this trend line is, it kind of goes back in time to, if you adjust gold for the M2 money supply, it hit the same level that was hit in 2011. So this really is kind of like a long-term resistance. It's not easily going to be breached. So, but in terms of looking at how far gold can go and what it went towards, if we adjust the 1980 high for the M2 money supply, it's over 10,000. So in terms of being a bubble, I don't see that. The other long-term metric I've talked about is the gold to silver ratio. And essentially, when the value of this metric gets low, it typically lines up with tops in gold and silver. So the 1980 peak, we kind of had that ratio at a 15. Not quite as low in 2011, but we got to almost 30. And so, for people to say, oh, gold and silver are in a bubble, I can't see that being a bubble where we're still in the upper 70s. That doesn't align with a bubble. On the last video, we talked about how the institutions are now recommending gold. I had mentioned the Morgan Stanley recommended shifting from a 60-40 split to a 60-20-20. When the 60-40 was essentially 60% stocks, 40% bonds, and now they're recommending 60% stocks, 20% bonds, and now a 20% allocation towards gold. Even Bank of America came out with their recommendation for a basket split of your portfolios, essentially 25, 25, 25, 25, where you have 25% stocks, 25% bonds, 25% short-term treasuries, and 25% gold. So, these recommendations are only starting to surface now. these things really haven't gotten mainstream, I would start to get a little more concerned. I talked to you how in my 401k and a lot of people's 401ks for their employer, there's no type of fund where they could partition a portion of their 401k to exposure to assets such as gold and silver that protect against inflationary periods. And so if I saw something like that, that would draw my attention more that the crowd is really getting pushed in. So based on the metrics and based on these recommendations by the institutions for allocation, I don't see the signs of a bubble. We're not there yet. Let's talk Libertads. And before we talk about the 2012 Libertad, I want to talk about Colorized Libertads. And so I put this post on the Libertad Coins subreddit. I made the same exact post in Facebook as well. And essentially, for you new collectors, I want you to be aware of these. These do not maintain numismatic value. They do not seem to appreciate as the price of silver goes up. These really exist more than nothing for just their aesthetic appeal. And so I was cognizant of that and I never bought one. And so when I saw the pre-sale on this, I got really excited by the design. And let me zoom in on this picture. Essentially, what you are seeing on the left side, the left picture, is the image that was presented. And all the pre-sales you saw on any of the basic platforms and on the Facebook groups, wherever dealers were doing sales, that was the image used. And the image was very sharp, and I love the imagery here of what I'm seeing with the dragon and the tiger. My wife's a dragon. My oldest son is a tiger in the Chinese zodiac, so really appealing. The yin and the yang, I really love that. But then the image on the right, and we'll zoom in on the actual coin you're seeing, and then the small screen, we'll zoom on that shortly. But the sharpness, the tiger and the dragon, they look faded, and I was very disappointed in that. So I was aware I was buying this for aesthetic reasons. I really wanted to kind of have this in display in the home office. That was the whole purpose of it. It wasn't like, oh, this is going to be worth a lot someday. No, not at all. It simply bought it like a piece of art, and I was rather disappointed in it. So this is what the coin I received looks like. As you can see, that background looks just very faded. Another detail is there was supposed to be bigger stars as well on the view, and you go back to the image, and they're not here at all. And it was just very disappointing. The gold plating on the angel herself, it was shinier in that pre-sale image, and then the images of the dragon and the tiger really were a lot more bold. They popped out more. Like I said, I really just bought this for the aesthetic appeal, as if it was a piece of art. I had plans to, if you've ever seen one of these floating displays, you just stick a coin in there and it's on a stand and you kind of display that. And so that was the plan. I was going to put it in one of these and then just have it on display in the home office, and I was very disappointed. It's not what I expected. I knew I was not buying this for value. I was buying as a piece of art, but just very disappointed. It comes in a little case here, a certificate of authenticity. Hobo Coin. That's the name of the one that made these colored versions, and then came in. This is the box on the outside. It's kind of what it looks like. I did see in my social media post on this small handful of positive comments where someone found one of these kind of design coins on their own, and they liked it. It turned out to be what they were looking for. And so I guess if I have any suggestion, if you want to get one of these, it would probably be best to do it in person at a coin show where you can see it there and say, hey, I really like this. I would like to display this. But that was certainly not the case for me. This concept of colorized Libertads has been around. I've seen them as far back as early 90s Libertads, but not many of them. I think the year where it really started to become prevalent is around 2018. And here's the funny thing they do with these. They make a design and then they'll tell you, these are limited to 500 pieces. But you know what they do is they just keep making design after design after design, and quite frankly, like if I had to guess, there's easily like 100 designs right now. And if you're doing 100 designs at 500 each, that's 50,000 of the mintage that you're taking away from numismatic quality like this, where no colorizing, no nonsense, that you can actually get graded. And they're taking away that supply. So if there's any upside to this gimmick, is essentially is you're making the legitimate Libertads go up further in value. They're taking away chunks of the supply to colorize them, and just basically they lose their value when you do this to them. So what you have is dates like the 2018 and the 2020, which are kind of very low mintage. And if they're colorizing like 50,000 of them, or maybe even more, that's a very, very sizable chunk of the mintage just wasted on colorizing. And all they're doing with this gimmick is making those that are holding the normal mint released ones just go up in value, because now they're more scarce. Now let's talk the 2012 Libertad. What you're noticing, you might notice here, this label, I've mentioned in a previous video, this particular label belongs to a dealer, goes by the name of Conejo Coin out in California. He seems just all exclusively focused on selling on eBay. And I mean, I guess the idea behind it was nice, but the execution very poor. What you have there in the top right is supposed to be an image of the Aztec calendar stone. But I mean, that's a great concept for a label, but the actual execution and what it looks like, just very poor. And I think a lot of people that collect agree with me on that. So given that, let's talk the mintage. The 2012 has a mintage of 746,400. So it's closer to the less scarce side than it is to scarce. Let's take a look at the graded populations at NGC and PCGS. Good news on the NGC side. It looks like they finally fixed up the population report, because it was previously heinous and everything was put out of order on a previous update, and I was having to come up here, click filter, and filter for the year just to find it. But now things are in order. But the one weird thing they did is they ordered the year and mixed the gold and silver together. In the past, they had all the silver lined up in order, and then came the gold lined up in chronological order as well. But this is better than what was there before. Taking a look at the 2012, we currently have a graded population of 1,229. Top pop is a 70 with 240 of them. And if we move over to PCGS side of things, there are 995 total graded and 274 at the top pop of MS70. As I mentioned previously, when I first started collecting these seriously in 2021, I kept track of the NGC populations going back to that year. And so I just mentioned there's 1,229 total graded population right now at NGC. And back when I first took the snapshot in time in 2021, there was 930 graded. Then around mid-2023, there was 988 total graded. And in 2025, this was 7 months ago, there was 1,214. So not many more graded in the last 7 months. We went from 1214 to 1229. Looking at the top pop, in 2021, we were at 209 MS70s. In 2023, we were at 218 MS70s. And 7 months ago, and still to this day, we're at 240 MS70s. You go back, still 240 MS70s. Let's take a look at some eBay sold comps for the 2012. So you make sure you turn on your sold listings filter and sort by ended recently, so you're seeing the most up-to-date and the latest comps. And given that it's just about 750,000 mintage, we wouldn't expect a raw coin to really cross the $100 barrier. And so what we're seeing October 22nd yesterday, $59.20. Another October 22nd one. This one went for 46, sizably less. This is a coin lot. I've talked to you about coin lots before. So a lot of times economic wise, and given that you get charged a shipping fee, a lot of times when that shipping fee is split amongst the batch of coins, it comes out cheaper. So if you are a new collector, it's a good idea to look for coin lots of multiple Libertads for multiple years. Down here on the 21st, another $59. Those are 2 ounces and proofs. We have here on October 19th, $64. And here's another one on October 17th, $65. So that's kind of the range, the going range for the 2012.